Today we are going to be looking over the Piper Alpha disaster, which is one of the largest man-made accidents ever. So we're going to be looking at the background and contributing factors, what led up to the explosion. Then we're going to be taking a look at the day of the explosion, what happened on that day. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at aftermath, results in terms of ethics.
Some background information about the Piper Alpha oil disaster. The Occidental oil spill, also known as the Piper Alpha disaster, was an industrial disaster which occurred when the Piper Alpha oil platform, located off the northern coast of Scotland, was engulfed in a fire and destroyed on July 6, 1988. The incident was quickly termed the worst offshore disaster in industry history. 167 people were killed and a total financial loss of over $3.4 billion, making it one of the most costly man-made disasters ever. At the time, the Piper Alpha platform was responsible for nearly 10% of the oil production from the North Sea, so it had a major effect on the industry. Some contributing factors to the disaster were, one, the construction. Piper Alpha was a large fixed platform which produced crude oil and natural gas from 24 wells for delivery to onshore facilities via 3 separate pipelines. Its exceptional size called for an unconventional design, including putting the gas compression room next to the control room, which would greatly contribute to the accident later on. The automatic firefighting system. Like most platforms, Alpha Piper was equipped with an automatic firefighting system driven by diesel and electric pumps designed to pump seawater onto the platform in case of fire. However, standard operating procedure dictated that the automatic firefighting system be switched into manual mode and operated from the control room if divers were in the water, even though it had been demonstrated that the intakes posed little danger to the divers. The firefighting system was in manual control mode on the evening of July 6th. The final contributing factor, and the biggest contributing factor, was a maintenance error. One of the rig's 2 condensation pumps, which compress vaporized natural gas into a liquid, was undergoing routine maintenance on the morning of the accident. Because the work could not be completed by 6 p.m., the pump was left in an unfinished state around 12 o'clock noon. The engineer on duty completed paperwork stating that the pump was not to be switched on under any circumstance, although this order was later not followed.
So now we're going to talk about actually what happened on that night. So the initial explosion happened around 10 p.m. Now, no one really knows what exactly happened on the platform, but many experts believe it was a cloud of gas condensate, which is a byproduct of oil exportation. I think after that, there's 2 more explosions once the fire reached the crude oil storage on the platform. Now, the crude oil storage was right next to the control room, so when they exploded, the control room was disabled, making communications inoperable. Now, the large sections of the Alpha platform actually started falling off as the explosions and the fires were spreading, making debris and structural pieces falling all over the place. Now, regular evacuation routes were out of the question because smoke and flames were in the hallways, making it impossible to breathe and see. So employees actually used wet towels to wrap around their faces so they can be able to breathe. Now, they ignored the company's recommendation to wait for extraction because they knew if they waited on the platform, it was certain death, because the Piper Alpha platform actually continued to export oil and gas from the seafloor, literally adding fuel to the fire. So all these events led up to the death of 167 people that night.
The Piper Alpha disaster resulted in a lack of safe practices. After the event, Occidental faced no charges, and management refused to acknowledge any responsibility for the event or accept any criticism for their procedures. Peter Fraser, the Lord Advocate and Scotland's chief legal advisor, decided not to prosecute Occidental, believing this would do no good for the public. His role as the Minister of Energy and his ties to the oil industry played a large role in his decision. Not only did Occidental suffer no penalties, the company was also given support by the British government. This came in the form of a multi-million-dollar new platform called the Piper Bravo, which was paid for through taxpayer money. Ultimately, this event highlighted the negligence of large corporations to core values such as safety practices and social responsibility, and their ignorance of public interest.
So, in conclusion, Piper Alpha was an oil platform owned by Occidental, responsible for a huge portion of the North Sea gas production, that suffered an explosion on July 6, 1988. The cause of the explosion is still unknown, and due to lack of safety procedures, many people lost their lives. Occidental faced no charges following the event, despite them being very much at fault.